Uh, we're going to record this, so we'll get started. We won't wait any longer, and we're off and running.
Cool.
If you're good to go.
Okay. Are you going to go ahead and hit record, or shall I?
Doing that now. Doing that.
Wonderful. Cool. So I guess I can go ahead and get started. Camamere, I guess it's all internal. Let me share my screen.
Not all internal. We're probably streaming with Ed Bailey, and then we've got Mark on the line.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, we'll have a mixed group here, prospects, customers as well, that join in as we go.
Fantastic. Can you give me sharing access, Shane?
There.
Perfect. All right. So welcome, everybody. We're going to be talking about the AWS QuickStarts that we have deployed on Amazon Web Services. These are specific to deploying Cribl, specifically Cribl Stream. And a couple of things that we did to build this whole solution, brief out, and get people to start using it internally for their own Cribl deployments. So we partnered with AWS and came up with a quick start guide that helps customers deploy Cribl Stream within their own AWS environment. And we built it in a couple different ways. We built it so that you could deploy Cribl Stream just by clicking a few buttons and launching this directly in your account. It'll also do a full deployment within its own VPC and actually enable logging as well for the VPC Flow logs. And we separated out based on architectures. So we have ARM64 and standard x86. So if you have specific reserved instances that aren't on a particular platform, you can go ahead and leverage them. Now, there is a full deployment guide that walks you through the entire step-by-step process. So it'll tell you like roughly what the costs are going to look like. The licensing, this is all based on the free model. So when you deploy this, it'll deploy the free versions of Cribl Stream in your environment. It also kind of gives you kind of this little architecture guide. This is meant for a single cloud deployment or a single instance deployment. So it'll deploy the single deployed leader node / worker node all in one. But it does deploy all the supporting components. So it has an application load balancer, and the Cribl Stream instance will actually straddle two availability zones. So if the leader node goes down or the instance goes down, it'll spawn back up, whether in availability 1 or 2. Obviously, that's determined by the algorithm itself. So I actually have this thing going right now because it takes a few minutes for it to fully deploy. We do have a GitHub repository as well linked to this, so you can actually see the CloudFormation templates that we're going to be deploying. So if you click on the templates folder, and by the way, I'll put the links inside the Zoom here in a minute, you can actually take a look at the CloudFormation templates that we were leveraging to deploy this. So the entry point template is effectively how we start this whole process up. It will link to the standard questions as far as how you're going to be deploying this. And it also has this resource here. This is the important one. It actually points to a very specific S3 bucket where the templates are located. And if you look at the other templates that we have here, there's one for a VPC and there's one with VPC plus logging. So in this scenario, this will actually go in and deploy an entire Cribl Stream instance within your AWS account. And it also deploy it within a brand new VPC, and it'll enable logging to an S3 bucket, and it'll also create the SQS, and it will also add all the lovely IAM policies that are strict to that particular S3 bucket and SQS. So you can actually see all that information within these templates. If you need to modify it, again, you can take these templates and fork it and go ahead and modify it for your own particular deployment. So are there any questions so far? Definitely feel free to interrupt whenever. I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, nothing in the chat so far. You're muted coming in, so you just have to take yourself off mute if you want to ask a question.
It scared me there. I thought I was muted. I'm like, oh no, I've been talking this whole time and no one heard me. So while people are thinking of interesting questions to ask, I'll go ahead and put this link in the chat. One thing to note is that you can actually search for our Quick Start just by going to and just Googling Cribl Stream Quick Start AWS. This is all very easy to find. You can also even go through and get directly to the Quick Start guide. If you just do AWS Quick Start GitHub, you'll see they have plenty of other Quick Start guides as well. Obviously, you can go here and just do a quick search for Cribl. I'm giving away some. There are other ones that we are working on. So obviously the Cribl one that we have right now is the log stream one. It was done before we name changed it. So there you go. So yeah, kind of just to walk you through the process. If you're over here in this stack here, you click on how to deploy, you'll select the type of deployment you want to have. So if you're looking at deploying into a new VPC, or if you want to deploy into an existing VPC, you click on any of these. It will then take you, assuming you're logged into your AWS account, right into here. So I have a quick question here. What about ELB S3 access logs, automation, and other services? Will they come as well? Good question. There are certain things that we're working on with respect to getting additional connections to these S3 buckets. One of the most difficult parts of this is that you need to have A, establish the permissions, and B, you have to know what those S3 buckets are, so that we can then start populating the CloudFormation templates to, or whatever automation, whether it be CloudFormation or potentially Terraform, to grant the proper access and permission sets to that. We are working on it right now. I have one for VPC Flow logs, and I have another one for CloudTrail. But ELB, S3, and others would be a good idea as well. Good question. Keep them coming. So again, once you click here, the couple things that keep in mind is it defaults to US East 1. If you need to deploy this in another region, say for example, US West 1, you'd click on this, it changes your region. And then you can go ahead and click next and deploy. The follow-up question about Terraform support. Good question. So we are in the process of building out the Terraform components with respect to this and other clouds. The idea is to kind of leverage the Terraform deployment to be more agnostic to how it gets deployed. Because this is an AWS Quick Start, we started with the CloudFormation template, and we're looking to see how we can build some of this into Terraform as well. I know that internally we have some Terraform templates, but I don't know how they would play in like the AWS space, and specifically with the Quick Starts. Good question, though. And just to kind of share more about like the deployment itself, it'll default to Cribl log stream. You can add any other, stack name. Just keep in mind, dashes are allowed, underscores and other wild characters are not. And then here you just start selecting from your own VPC. It'll click, do a drop down at the VPC. You'll need 2 subnets. This is critical because you're going to be deploying this across 2 AZs. So you have to have 2 subnets. And then if you want to lock this thing down based on a particular site or match, you can. Otherwise, you can do just the wide open zeros across the board. You can pick whatever size instance you'd like. C5As are probably least expensive. And then just make sure that everything else looks good. This is a standard bucket name, standard prefix. Obviously, we went to US West 1 in Northern California. And then click next. All this is pretty standard information. Click next. Then this kind of has a recap of all the settings, any tags you want to add or remove, any additional policies, and then just here do the acknowledgements and then create stack. I'll go ahead and see how this goes. And now the fun part of watching paint dry. Ideally, when this is all done, you'll have a couple components here. So it'll, well, great, I already broke it. So when the resources do get created, I actually have some that were done already in the past, but the resources will show up S3 buckets, ALBs, ELBs, all the information that will show up the instance types. And then on the outputs, it'll actually show the instance ID, which you're going to need in order to log into this instance. Let me see if I have. And what I'm doing right now is I'm looking for some stacks that I've already created in another deployment. So I'm trying to see where they all are. Here we go. So the way that this one worked is that it will go ahead and, like I said, this one I've already deleted from the past, but it'll create all the information here, and then it'll tell you the resources that are also created. And then when you need to log into it, it'll give you the URL of the ALB. So the good news about this is that when it creates the resources, if the instance dies, since your load balancer URL is not tied to the instance, you just click on this, it'll then get you to the new instance, and then you can put in your admin username and then the leader node's EC2 instance ID as the password. And that'll log you in, and then you can start doing your work again and getting going from there. Now, I did kind of tip my hat with respect to, and again, feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. The quick starts that we are working on, we're looking at doing private link AMI. So being able to deploy a set of Cribl worker nodes in your account and then help traverse data over private link. It'll create the private link, and you just have to fill in the connection type that you want to use. So it'll create the load balancer, it'll create the ports and all that stuff. That's one of the other quick starts that we're looking to deploy first. We are looking to do kind of an easy button for Cribl Edge, so you can deploy Cribl Edge nodes within your account. And then finally, CloudTrail, help kind of deploy CloudTrail, but also be able to collect and send data in CloudTrail format. Any questions or requests that the group may have around this?
No, Cam, I think it's a very good starting point, and we have talked before and shared some of the scripts. I think it's, yeah, as I said, good starting point. Once you have a little bit a more complex setup, no matter what you do, it becomes challenging.
That's a very true statement. We're trying to make this so that people can start leveraging kind of an easy button to deploy both Cribl Stream, but also sources and destinations within AWS. So being able to quickly deploy CloudTrail, for example, or quickly deploy VPC Flow logs, set it up and have it automatically send the data to an S3 bucket, and then automatically set up the source and or destination in Cribl Stream. That's the ideal kind of scenario, but we're building on it. So we're starting with kind of the first building block is this quick start around, hey, let's just deploy an instance. This was obviously before we really had the cloud stacks. I still kind of default to cloud to deploy this, but if you want to deploy it internally to work on it, figure out how exactly this is going to work in your environment and test out scenarios outside of Cribl Cloud, this is, I think, one of the better ways to understand it and deploy it at scale within your AWS account.
I think if I have a suggestion or can make a suggestion, Cam,
sure.
What I think would be very helpful is have a basic template which pretty much just deploys Cribl in AWS, and then have all the other ones like adding CloudTrail, adding VPC Flow logs, adding ELB and ALB logs, S3 logs, and so on as sub-playbooks, because that would give customers a little bit a better understanding what are the required steps in AWS to get those features working with Cribl.
That's a good idea. That's a good point. Then we could absolutely do something in that realm.
Yeah, because then the second point will be, and I've heard that now from other Cribl customers, they have similar challenges than us. They need to regionalize their Cribl environment around the world, because then you want to tie it just to one region in a given account. So you pretty much have the flexibility to mix and match as you want. And having such a quick start, I think, would be very helpful, definitely for all the customers outside of US.
Okay, so effectively have it so that they would be able to deploy their Cribl stream within the regions that they need to support, as well as collecting all the data from those regions as well.
Correct.
Yeah, no, we can definitely work on something like that. Are there any regions that you need specific support in that we don't currently support?
No, I think I'm fine with what is by default supported in Cribl Stream. I have found everything I need so far, so that is good.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So there is one thing here that I'm going to share that is tangential to this. Let me pull it up real quick here. All right. So this is effectively what I was talking about. We already have a couple of these components here, and these are all CloudFormation templates that you can easily launch. These are going to be kind of set up for future quick starts, but have them already available. The idea here is to help deploy and configure the VPC Flow logs and the CloudTrail logs with this is just a placeholder to keep all your S3 buckets, SQSs, and regions in a documentation format. And then you literally just click on these links, and this will take you into setting up CloudTrail. This will actually enable CloudTrail within that region, set it up to send S3, and also enable the SQS notifications on put events. So as you start adding data to the S3 bucket, it'll then trigger the SQS, which will then trigger Cribl to go reach out and get the data and then transit it to wherever it needs to go. And so I can show this as well, but it's very simple. You literally just give it a name, you give it a CloudTrail SQS name, and click next, and it'll deploy everything else for you. Similar goes for VPC Flow logs. You click on this link here, it'll deploy VPC Flow logs, set up the logging, and set up the SQS notifications. All of this also has the IAM policy that it'll create and be very targeted to the resources that are being generated here. So for example, it'll be tied to the S3 bucket and the SQS specific to the VPC and CloudTrail, nothing else. So once those two foundational logging components are set up, the final one would be right here. So this is just walking you through that step process again. I don't know why that's duplicated. But then this will finally set up a trust. If you're using Cribl Cloud, you can leverage the trust policy or the trust role that we give you. And this will actually just click this button. It'll create the IAM policy and role within your account. And then it'll enable that trust that you get from the Cribl Cloud account. And it'll only allow that account to get the data from the SQS and S3 buckets that have been specified earlier. And so the input looks like this. S3 bucket, SQS, and then the VPC flow, and also, I'm sorry, that's the trust. Then the external ID, which we strongly recommend you use for like additional security. And then your VPC bucket, your S3 bucket, and the SQS bucket. Once it runs, it'll then allow you to go into Cribl and put in the SQS, the S3 bucket, enable the assume role with the IAM role that's created and the external ID for both VPC Flow and CloudTrail. And then you'll start to see data flowing once you commit and deploy it. So this is 3 CloudFormation templates. You just run them in sequence. I broke them out. I did not stack them, primarily because I wanted people to have the freedom to set up CloudTrail or VPC Flow. If they already have it set up, they can just do one or the other. And that's what I got. Any other questions or comments? Is this something that you would see beneficial to have, to leverage outside of in your environment?
Definitely can.
Perfect. Go ahead and put this in the chat as well.
And no more questions in the chat.
Very cool.
I would have one question then for you, Cam, based on your experience with AWS. We have the challenge that we have about 150 different AWS accounts in every region.
Yep.
And I need to onboard pretty much the typical sources like VPC Flow logs, CloudTrail, S3 access log for each of those accounts. What would be your best recommendation to achieve that without going bonkers?
I guess the first question is, do you leverage control tower or organizations?
We are building a complete new control tower now, but in the current setup, we don't.
Okay. So how do you provision the AWS accounts today? Is it manually?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I did do with AWS, let me get it real quick here, was we have the concept of the multi-account data collection, but it leverages the control tower capability. And the reason that control tower is, I strongly recommend it, is because it gives you that central central way of controlling your overall AWS account creation. So you automate that, and effectively what happens behind the scenes is when you generate this brand new account, it'll trigger an event, and that will then trigger a stack set CloudFormation template, and that'll deploy Cribl Stream into that account, and you can have it then do all the steps we just did, VPC Flow, CloudTrail, and it'll start to just automatically send the data to your central location, whether that be an S3 bucket or Splunk or Elasticsearch or wherever you need it to go. So this does exist. It does work today. That would be the approach I would take, because you're doing this manually. Obviously, it will drive you bonkers, but there is no way to really do it. If you're manually creating your AWS accounts today, it's really difficult to then automate that account creation and then account collection of data. If you have something like Control Tower, the system like a framework like Control Tower, then this will allow you to make that much more easily managed and deployable.
Well, I've been telling them that since about a year, but hey.
I know. It's definitely a difficult concept for a lot of organizations to grasp. But the good news is that you can, I think now Control Tower does support upgrading an existing master payer account or master account to be that Control Tower account.
I keep you posted.
Yeah, no, reach out. I'd be very interested to hear how you guys do it. And if you need any help from us, absolutely feel free to reach out. You have me on Slack, you have me on email, and we can definitely work with each other to get this thing going. Yeah, I'll post this in here too.
But all these links are going to be in your blog afterwards, right, Cam?
Absolutely.
Yes, I knew it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we're working on with AWS today. A lot more quick starts that we're going to be publishing and getting out the door. But again, if you have any requests or anything else that you want to see, let us know, and we can obviously work towards building those out as well, because we definitely want to help out our customers get the most out of their AWS deployment and obviously their Cribl deployment as well. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No, Mark, it's totally fine. If you have other questions or anything,
all the questions, Mark, this is your time. This is why we do this, right? We want to make sure that as we basically go through office hours, we get the questions out. And then after that, when we do a wrap up, folks have all the gotchas together. They can accelerate through some of the stuff that folks that we might have missed, and what the folks need to be successful. So we welcome questions. That's what I mean to say.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll reach out directly because I think it's getting too technical then.
Oh, it can never get too technical.
You don't know me.
but yeah, we can set up a session and go into more detail and help you out. Make sure we're covering everything that you need done.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone on the Cribl side have questions or comments that they'd like to share?
This is great stuff, Cam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Quiet crowd.
I think Joe just signed up to do one of the modules, right? After you
That's
have the
essentially what
AWS just for
that,
stream.
means. Exactly. Yes.
That's
Thanks, Mike.
perfect. Awesome. I love you, man. I love you.
So yeah, I guess we will keep you all posted with any updates on this with blog posts and also any kind of communications we might do with AWS with their APN log or APN blog or other communication methods.
Cam, this Joe, do you have any sense on, how many customers are taking advantage of Control Tower? Seems like an awesome thing for them to be using, but do you have any feel for that? Is it hard to deploy for them or?
So there are two parts in this. When you talk about Control Tower, you have organizations, which is kind of the underlining component, the framework. And then Control Tower is a series of like guardrails or controls that AWS puts into place. And what I've seen, customers that have large number of AWS accounts, they tend to go towards Control Tower because it gives them a very easy way to manage creation and reduction and deployments of new AWS accounts. So yeah, and Mark's right. It's about, I would say, a good 30% are using Control Tower. A lot of this is because there are a lot of legacy customers that kind of weren't able to upgrade or get to Control Tower. They've made that process a lot easier now. So customers can go from non-Control Tower to a Control Tower-led environment. The previous iteration was called Landing Zones, and it was done with a consulting company. And the Landing Zones paradigm is very similar to Control Tower, but it was kind of the first iteration of it. And that was kind of what led the foundation for organizations and then the Control Tower that we have today. They're constantly upgrading and improving it. So I would assume that as customers start to grow and leverage even more, like creating multiple accounts within their overall AWS environment, that they're going to need a way to vend accounts and control that and make sure that you don't have any rogue accounts running out there. Control Tower is probably the best way to do so. But yeah, it's I think it's just a learning curve of getting people comfortable with using Control Tower within AWS. But once they
some customers seem to be able to expand things and get the accounts right away. And I wonder if they're using Control Tower or just different environments. So thanks for all the background.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think AWS organizations, which is kind of the thing behind it all, is more mature. And that's what kind of led people to then say, for example, like some organizations just use AWS organizations and they don't use Control Tower because they're like, that's too many pieces, too many moving parts. So they just want the automation to create the accounts. To an extent, you can do certain little things like if you vend a new account, you do trigger that event bridge or CloudWatch event rule. And then you can trigger something off of that, like a Lambda function, and then create your Cribl stream deployment, for example. You can do that without technically having Control Tower because that's leveraging organizations instead. But Control Tower gives you a lot more flexibility with rules and things like that. So, 6 of one, half dozen the other, however people want to do this. Very cool. Again, find me on the Cribl Slack. Happy to go into more detail about any of the things we discussed here on AWS. or others. And yeah, feel free to keep sending us suggestions and recommendations on how to improve and make this better and make it easier for you.
Thanks, Cam.
Hey, you're welcome.
I just stopped the recording, and thank you everybody for joining. We'll have this up on YouTube shortly.
Very cool.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye now.
Bye.